Prime Robert Baratheon. In his prime, Robert Baratheon was a walking natural disaster. He stood 6.5 feet tall, a maiden's fantasy with a voice that could command an entire battlefield. Robert leaned into pure, raw power. In battle, he wore a massive antlered helmet that made him look like a horned god of the woods come to life. His weapon of choice was a spiked iron and steel warhammer forged by Donald Noy. This thing was a freak of engineering. It was so heavy that Ned Stark could not even lift it, yet Robert swung it with one hand like a toy. He proved his power early at the siege of Gulltown. He was the first man over the walls, cutting his way into the city while braving a hail of arrows. Robert's stamina was just as legendary as his strength. At Summerhall, he won 3 separate battles in a single day. He intercepted Lord Grandison and broke his host, smashed Lord Caffrin before the dust could settle, and defeated Lord Silveraxe by sunset. He possessed the unique charisma of a conqueror. By nightfall, he was drinking and laughing with the very men he had just beaten. He turned enemies into his most loyal friends through pure personality and a mutual respect for a good scrap. The pinnacle of his life was the Battle of the Trident. Amidst the chaos of the river crossing, Robert met Prince Rhaegar Targaryen in single combat. Rhaegar managed to wound him, but Robert ended the rebellion with a legendary blow that crushed the prince's chest. The impact was so violent, it scattered the rubies from Rhaegar's armor into the water like drops of blood. That one swing effectively ended a 300-year dynasty. Even when cornered, he was lethal. During the Battle of the Bells, a wounded Robert emerged from a brothel to personally kill 6 knights, including the famous Sir Miles Mouton. He nearly took the head of the king's hand, John Connington, proving that even at his lowest, Robert Baratheon was the most dangerous man in the 7 Kingdoms. Cregan Stark. As the Lord of Winterfell during the Dance of the Dragons, Cregan Stark was a man of iron will and terrifying skill. Even the legendary Prince Aemon the Dragon Knight, arguably the greatest swordsman to ever live, admitted that he had never faced a finer opponent than the Old Wolf, Cregan Stark of the North, who was already an old man by the time Aemon dueled him. It was elite, high-level combat prowess that commanded respect from the finest knights in the South. Cregan carried Ice, the ancestral Valyrian steel greatsword of House Stark. The blade was 6 feet tall, nearly the height of a man, yet Cregan wielded it with terrifying ease, moving the massive weight as if it were a simple longsword. His true power peak was the Hour of the Wolf. Cregan marched his Northmen into a chaotic King's Landing and effectively took over the continent without a second thought. For 6 days, he served as Hand of the King, presiding over a series of ruthless trials to punish those who had poisoned Aegon II. He was judge, jury, and executioner, using the 6-foot blade of ice to deliver justice personally. Maegor Targaryen. Maegor the Cruel was the most terrifying warrior to ever sit on the Iron Throne. He was a massive, bull-like man who lived for slaughter, and was arguably the most naturally gifted fighter in Targaryen history. His strength was almost inhuman. At just 16, he outjousted 3 Kingsguard knights in a single tournament and became the youngest knight of his time. Maegor proved his lethality early, joining the campaigns in the Stepstones to crush the pirate king Sargoso San. At 19, he cemented his legend by defeating the Giant of the Trident in single combat. Maegor wielded Blackfire, the sword of Aegon the Conqueror, with a level of brutality that horrified the realm. He once decapitated his own Grand Maester with a swing. To secure his power, he ended the Septon Uprising by mounting Balerion the Black Dread and incinerating thousands of rebellious faith militants in a single morning. He even slew his own nephew, Aegon the Uncrowned, in the sky above the God's Eye to end all challenges to his rule. He lived by the blade and died by it, found dead on the Iron Throne, with the chair's own spikes supposedly piercing his neck. Maelys Blackfire. Maelys the Monstrous was a walking nightmare. Born with a second fist-sized head growing from his neck, many believed he had consumed his twin in the womb. He fought like a monster. During his rise to power, Maelys twisted the head of his own cousin, Daemon Blackfire, off his shoulders with his bare hands just to claim leadership of the Golden Company. On the battlefield, his strength was inhuman. He famously killed a destrier, a massive armored warhorse, with a single punch to the head. During the War of the Ninepenny Kings, Maelys was an unstoppable juggernaut. He personally cut down Lord Ormond Baratheon, the Hand of the King to Jaehaerys II. He was finally met in single combat by a young Sir Barristan Selmy. In a legendary duel amidst the carnage of the Stepstones, Barristan managed to cut his way through the Golden Company's ranks and slay Maelys. With his death, the male line of House Blackfyre was finally extinguished. Sandok the Shadow. He was a 7-foot-tall, silent pit fighter from Essos who became the ultimate shield for Aegon III. A survivor of the fighting pits of Meereen, Sandok was a terrifying spectacle. A massive, black-skinned eunuch with a face crisscrossed by scars and a tongue cut out by his former masters. In the pits, he reportedly faced and slew lions, wolves, bears, and even wyverns with no weapons but stones he found on the sands. While killing wyverns might be dismissed as an exaggerated tall tale, it suggests he was powerful enough that people truly believed he was capable of it. During the secret siege of Maegor's Holdfast, while the Red Keep was falling to traitors, Sandok stood alone at the end of a narrow drawbridge. Armed with a tall black shield and a curved Valyrian steel blade, he faced down an entire company of elite soldiers. In a single engagement, he famously slaughtered Sir Amori Peake of the Kingsguard, along with 12 other armored knights. Accounts say he moved with a fluid, unnatural grace that made his massive frame look like a blur of shadow. He was essentially the Gregor Clegane of his time, but without the madness. And weirdly, Sandok was also a skilled musician. He was a master at playing sweet, sad songs on a massive, 7-stringed instrument made of golden wood and silver gilt. The Smiling Knight was the most dangerous member of the Kingswood Brotherhood, and a precursor to the madness of the Mountain. He was a true psychopath who fought with a constant, unsettling grin, regardless of the carnage surrounding him. Jaime Lannister, who faced him as a young squire, described him as the Gregor Clegane of his generation, a man of immense strength and total insanity, but with even greater technical skill. He was essentially the Joker of Westeros, a chaotic, unpredictable force who lived for the slaughter and showed a complete disregard for his own life. His legendary peak was his final duel against Sir Arthur Dayne. During the fight, the Smiling Knight's sword was chipped so badly by the legendary blade Dawn, forged from the heart of a fallen star, that Dayne paused the fight to let him get a new one. The knight's response was pure madness. "It's that white sword of yours I want." Dayne replied, "Then you shall have it, sir," and proceeded to slay him. He was a lethal whirlwind of chaos, who only met his end at the hands of the greatest swordsman in history. Strong Belwas was a massive, brown-skinned eunuch and an undefeated champion of the fighting pits of Meereen. A 3-time champion of the Great Pit of Daznak, he was a monolith of muscle and scar tissue who claimed to have never lost a fight. His fighting style was as arrogant as it was effective. He allowed every opponent to cut him once before he killed them, boasting a chest and belly covered in hundreds of pale scars, one for every man he had slain. His dominance was truly cemented during the siege of Meereen. When the city's champion, Osnak Paul, rode out to challenge Daenerys' army, Belwas stepped forward. He dodged the knight's lance, killed the horse, and then decapitated Osnak with a single swing of his arak. To add ultimate insult to his victory, he urinated toward the city gates. He once ate an entire bowl of poisoned locusts. While the poison would have dropped a horse, the monolith of a man simply became deathly ill and survived through sheer physical grit. He remains one of the most durable and fearsome warriors to ever emerge from the fighting pits of Essos. Maegor Rivers, known as Bittersteel, was a legendary warrior commander and the most enduring of the great bastards. A man of cold fury and iron discipline, he was defined by his lifelong hatred for his half-brother, Bloodraven. On the battlefield, Aegor was a juggernaut. During the First Blackfyre Rebellion, he famously took command after Daemon Blackfyre fell, leading a mad charge that nearly turned the tide. His most legendary fight was his duel with Bloodraven at the Redgrass Field, where he personally ripped out his brother's eye. After fleeing to Essos, he founded the Golden Company, the most elite sellsword organization in history. Aegor's legacy lived on even after death. His skull was dipped in gold and carried on a pike, leading his men into battle for centuries to come. Standing over 6 feet tall, she possessed the reach and strength of a man, combined with a technical mastery of the blade that humbled most knights. Her fighting style was a war of attrition. She used her massive frame to batter opponents until their stamina broke. Her heritage was equally formidable, as she was a descendant of the legendary Sir Duncan the Tall. Like her ancestor, she was a titan on the battlefield, a fact that was most evident during her duel with a shackled but still lethal Jaime Lannister. Even the Kingslayer admitted that her strength was freakish, noting that she was stronger than almost any man he had ever faced. Later, she was gifted Oathkeeper, a Valyrian steel blade forged from the remains of Ned Stark's sword, Ice. She used this legendary weapon to carve through elite outlaws and seasoned soldiers. Sir Loras Tyrell, the Knight of Flowers, was the greatest prodigy of his generation. According to George R.R. Martin, a strong case can be made that Loras was the greatest active swordsman in Westeros at the start of the series. When discussing the realm's strongest fighters, Martin consistently mentions Loras as a top-tier threat. His skill was undeniable. By the age of 15, he was already a champion jouster, famously unhorsing both Jaime Lannister and Hostine Frey at a tournament in King's Landing. Jaime himself later admitted that Loras reminded him of his younger self, a natural talent who was all steel under the silk. In battle, Loras was a whirlwind of aggression. Following the death of Renly Baratheon, he led the vanguard for the Tyrell-Lannister alliance at the Battle of the Blackwater, cutting down dozens of men in a blind rage. His most legendary feat, however, was the Siege of Dragonstone. To end the war quickly, he led a reckless frontal assault on the castle walls. Despite being doused in boiling oil and struck by multiple crossbow bolts, he refused to retreat until the fortress fell. While Loras Tyrell sought the spotlight, his older brother, Sir Garlan the Gallant, was the true master of the blade. Garlan was the superior swordsman of House Tyrell, possessing a quiet, deadly efficiency that even his brother admitted was on another level. He was a man who trained by sparring against 3 or 4 opponents at once to prepare himself for the chaos of a real battlefield. His most glorious fight occurred during the Battle of the Blackwater. Garlan wore the iconic green-enameled stag armor of the fallen King Renly Baratheon to strike psychological terror into Stannis' ranks. In the thick of the fighting, he led the Tyrell vanguard and personally slew Sir Gyard Morrigan of the Rainbow Guard in single combat. Despite being one of the most lethal men in Westeros, Garlan was famously humble, earning his nickname the Gallant. Daemon Targaryen was the definition of high risk, high reward on the battlefield. He was a veteran of the bloody war for the Stepstones, where he spent years leading a motley army of sellswords and sailors against the Triarchy. This experience made him a gritty, adaptive combatant who knew how to survive in the mud just as well as in the sky. His mastery of the Valyrian steel sword Dark Sister was legendary. The blade, originally designed for a woman's hand, was thinner and lighter than Blackfire, allowing Daemon to utilize a fighting style built on incredible speed and precision. This prowess was most famously displayed during the battle above the God's Eye. In a move of idle brilliance, Daemon leapt from his saddle mid-air to plunge Dark Sister through the eye of his nephew, Aemond One-Eye. The strike was so precise that it drove the blade through Aemond's skull and out of his throat. Khal Drogo was the undefeated apex predator of the Dothraki Sea. Leading a Khalasar of 20,000 riders, he was a warlord who had never lost a single battle. His power was reflected in his hair, which hung in a massive braid reaching down to his thighs, a testament to a lifetime of victories without ever needing to cut it in shame. Drogo led through sheer, terrifying physical dominance. He was a master of the Arak, a curved Dothraki blade built for speed and decapitation. His fighting style was built on high mobility and feline reflexes. He fought without a shield or armor, relying on his speed to make his enemy's heavy steel look useless. He killed the rival Khal Ogo and his son in the same afternoon, taking their braids as trophies. Even when wounded, he was lethal. He once dropped his weapons and killed a challenger with his bare hands, ripping the man's tongue out through his throat.